Your job title is worth money. Not your rank, not your awards, but your MOS, your rate, your AFSC, your occupation, whatever the hell your branch called it. There's a government document from about 2010 that links specific military jobs to specific injuries. If your MOS or occupation is on that specific list, the VA has to concede you were exposed. No argument, no extra evidence, just conceded. Now, most veterans have never seen this document. Most VSOs don't mention it. And VA raters, well, 9 times out of 10, they have no clue what your job actually involved. They see 11 Bravo or 19 Kilo or 0311 on a piece of paper and they think they understand what you did. They don't. They don't know about the rucksacks, the static line jumps, the engine noise, the burn pits, the vibrations, the blast exposures, the years of abuse your body took doing a job they can't even picture. Which means if you don't explain it to them in great detail, you're leaving rating points on the table. So today, I'm going to break down exactly how your MOS or occupation affects your VA claim, the specific injuries tied to specific jobs, and the documents you need to make sure the VA understands what you actually did for this country. This applies to whether you were infantry, armor, aviation engineer, Navy, special operations, all of it. So stay with me. Okay. So let me explain why this matters so much. When a VA rater looks at your claim, they're trying to answer one question. Is this condition that they're claiming connected to their military service? That's it. That's the whole game. Now, they have your service records, they have your medical records, but here's the problem. Most VA raters have never served. Most C&P examiners have never served. They've never worn a uniform. They have no frame of reference for what military service actually looks like from a day-to-day standpoint. So when they see that you were a 19 Kilo and M1 armor crewman, they don't picture what that actually means. They don't picture you climbing on and off a 70-ton tank every day for 4 years. They don't picture the ankle injuries from jumping off the hull. They don't picture the knee damage from squatting in a turret. They don't picture the constant engine noise, the diesel fumes, the hydraulic fluid, the blast exposure from main gun rounds. They just see 19 Kilo and they move on. This is why veterans with identical conditions get different ratings. One veteran explains their MOS and occupation in detail, the other assumes the VA knows about it. The first one will get service connected, the second one gets denied because there's insufficient evidence of an in-service event. It's the same injury, the same MOS and occupation, but different outcomes. Because one veteran connected the dots and the other expected the VA to do for them. The VA is not going to do this for you. You have to do it yourself. Now, quick background on me. I'm Dr. Marshall Barr. I'm an actual doctor, a special operations combat medic, former Army Ranger. I've done multiple combat tours. So when I talk about MOS occupation-related injuries, I'm not reading from a manual. I have actually lived it. I've treated it. Rangers, infantry, tankers, pilots, mechanics, engineers. I've seen what these jobs do to bodies over time. I also run Xterra Health, where we help veterans with next letters and DBQs. We've worked with thousands of veterans, and I can tell you, MOS documentation is one of the most overlooked aspects of the entire claims process. So let me show you how to fix that for your claim. Before I get into specific MOSs or occupation examples, I need to tell you about the FAST letter, F-A-S-T, because this document alone could change your entire claim. So FAST stands for Federal Automated System Tracking. In 2010, the VA issued a letter, often called the Duty MOS Noise Exposure Listing. That links specific military occupations to high probability of hazardous noise exposure. Here's why this is huge. If your MOS is on that list and you're claiming hearing loss or tinnitus, the VA is supposed to concede the in-service noise exposure. They don't need additional proof. They don't need to find it in your medical records. Your MOS alone or your occupation alone establishes that you were exposed to hazardous noise. That's half the battle for service connection right there. You just need current diagnosis and a nexus. The exposure part is already handled. So what MOS or occupation codes are on the list? Well, there's actually quite a few of them. Infantry, right? All branches, armor, artillery, combat engineers, aviation like pilots, crew chiefs, mechanics, special operations, explosive ordnance disposal, military police, transportation, motor pool. The list is extensive. But here's the thing. A lot of veterans don't know this document exists. A lot of VSOs don't even mention it. And sometimes, even when it applies, the VA examiner or rater doesn't even reference it. So, what do? Well, you gotta reference it yourself. In your statement and a supportive claim, you write something like, as an 11 Bravo infantryman, I am listed on the VA's duty MOS noise exposure listing as having high probability of hazardous noise exposure. Per the 2010 FAST letter, in-service noise exposure should be conceded for my tinnitus and hearing loss claim. You're making it easy for them. You're doing their homework for them. You're creating a paper trail that makes it extremely hard for them to deny you. Now, if you want a copy of this list, just Google VA Duty MOS Noise Exposure Listing, or you can check the links in the description. Know your MOS or occupation and know what it is on that list before you ever file. So now let's get into specific MOS or occupation examples, because this is where you need to educate the VA about what your job actually involves. I'm going to cover several categories. So I want you to find yours or listen for yours or the one closest to yours, and then think about how this applies to your specific claim today. So let's start with the knuckle draggers, the grunts, the infantry, right? So if you are infantry, your body took a beating that civilians can never comprehend. And I'm not just talking about combat. I'm talking about the daily grind of the job. Rucksack injuries, right? You carried 60, 80, 100 plus pounds on your back for miles, day after day, year after year. That load goes straight into your spine, your hips, your neck, your knees, your ankles, degenerative disc disease, lumbar strain, knee arthritis, plantar fasciitis. Those are classic infantry diseases. Repetitive jump injuries. So if you were airborne, every static line jump is a controlled crash. Your knees, ankles, and spine absorb the impact. Hundreds of jumps over a career, the cumulative damage is real. I mean, even if you had only 5 jumps over your career from jump school, that damage is real. Hearing loss and tinnitus. So constant weapons being fired, right? So you got the M4s, the M16s, M249s, M240s, grenades, IEDs, even with hearing protection, which, let's be honest, you didn't always wear. I mean, the exposure was relentless. TBIs and concussions. I mean, you had blast exposures, right? Even if you never got a Purple Heart, you were near explosions. IEDs, mortars, breaching charges, grenades. Your brain took hits. Mild TBI or concussions are rampant in infantry veterans. So when you write your personal statement, don't just say, I was infantry. Say, I was an 11 Bravo. My daily duties included foot patrols carrying 80 to 100 pounds of gear over rough terrain. I completed over 50 static line jumps during my career. I was exposed to constant weapon fire, including M4, M249 Bravo, M240 Bravo, AT4, without consistent hearing protection. I was even within 50 meters of an IED detonation on multiple occasions, actually. What you're doing is painting the picture. Make them understand your story. Okay, so let's talk about tankers and cavalry scouts, right? If you spent your career on armored vehicles, you've got a specific injury profile. So lower extremity injuries, right? Things like ankles, knees, hips. You're climbing on and off a tank multiple times a day, jumping from the hull to the ground. That impact adds up over time. I have seen tankers with destroyed ankles by their mid-30s. Then you've got back and knee injuries. I mean, these hatches, the turret positions, the constant vibration. You're contorting your body into positions it wasn't designed for, while the vehicle is bouncing over rough terrain. And then there's hearing loss. Oh my God, hearing loss. The engine noise alone is over 100 decibels. And main gunfire, Coke's loader's hatch, your ears never stand a chance or stood a chance. And then there are toxic exposures, diesel fumes, hydraulic fluid, carbon monoxide in enclosed spaces. If you ever got a headache from being buttoned up in a tank, that was probably carbon monoxide exposure. So in your personal statement, say something like, as a 19 kilo M1 armor crewman or equivalent, I spent an average of 8 to 12 hours per day in and around armored vehicles. I regularly jumped from the tank holes 4 to 5 feet to the ground while wearing my full kit. I was exposed to continuous engine noise exceeding 100 decibels and main gunfire during gunnery. I was regularly exposed to diesel fumes and hydraulic fluid in enclosed crew compartments. Okay, so now I want to talk about combat engineers, 12 Bravos. You guys build things and then blow them up, sometimes on the same day. So things, specific injuries to this particular occupation, musculoskeletal injuries, back, shoulders, knees. You're lifting heavy equipment, swinging sledgehammers, carrying demo, digging fighting positions. It is manual labor at its most extreme. You've got hand and wrist injuries, power tools, hand tools, constant gripping and impact, carpal tunnel, tendonitis, arthritis in your hands, and then your head, your TBI, the concussions. If you did any breaching or demo work at all, you were exposed to repeated blasts. The overpressure from breaching charges, even when you're behind cover, affects your brain. And then hearing loss, demolitions, power tools, generators, heavy equipment, they all produce constant noise. Now, as a 12 Bravo combat engineer, you're going to say something like this in your personal statement. My duties included constructing fighting positions and placing obstacles, route clearance, and demolition operations. I regularly lifted equipment exceeding 50 pounds and operated power tools, including jackhammers and concrete saws. I participated in breaching operations involving explosive charges and was exposed to blast overpressure on numerous occasions. Now, I want to talk about pilots and crew, right? So aviation, pilots, crew chiefs, door gunners, mechanics. Injuries you're going to see in these particular occupations are cervical spine injuries, right? So helicopter pilots especially, the weight of the helmet, the NVGs, the constant vibration, the head position required to fly. Neck injuries are an epidemic in Army aviation. And then there are the back injuries. I mean, the seating alone, the vibration, the body position over long flights. And then hearing loss, rotors, engines, weapon systems. Even with the helmets on, the noise exposure is massive. And then for mechanics, you're talking about things like shoulder and back strain from working in awkward positions, reaching into airframes, holding tools over your head. And then the toxic exposures like jet fuel, the JP4, hydraulic fluids, solvents, exhaust. Aviation maintenance is literally just a chemical bath. So what you would document is something like, as a UH-60 Blackhawk crew chief, I spent approximately 800 flight hours in aircraft exposed to constant rotor noise and engine exhaust. I regularly performed maintenance requiring overhead work in awkward body positions. I was exposed to things like JP8 fuel, hydraulic fluid, and cleaning solvents on a daily basis without consistent respiratory protection. Now, this next one is personal for me, special operations. Things like Rangers, Special Forces, SEALs, MARSOC, PJs, combat controllers, whatever it may be. If you are a Special Operations Forces person, your body was a rental car that you drove into the ground. The selection processes alone cause injuries that follow you for life. Then you add years of deployments, training cycles, and a culture that actively discourages seeking medical attention. Literally everything I've mentioned, plus more, is the injuries you're going to see, right? So rucksack injuries from selection and training events, airborne injuries from, say, constant jumping from often combat equipment jumps like halo, hey-ho, static line. You've got fast ropes, you've got rappelling injuries, breaching and blast exposures, repeated head injuries and TBIs from years of close quarter work and breaching. Musculoskeletal damage from carrying heavy loads at high intensity for extended periods of time. There's a reason the Special Operation Forces community has some of the highest disability rates in the entire military. And then there's mental health. PTSD rates in special operations is significant. High intensity combat, moral injuries, repeated deployments, traumatic experiences that you may never have talked about. Here's the challenge for most special operation veterans. A lot of what you did is not well documented. It's classified missions, operational security, OPSEC, units that don't keep traditional records. You may have done things that never made it into your official file. I know I have. This is where detailed personal statements and buddy statements become very critical to your claim. You need to explain what you did because the records may and usually do not show it. So let me talk about Navy veterans for a minute, because your MOS, your rate, comes with its own set of exposures. Hearing loss, right? Shipboard noise is constant. You've got engine rooms, flight decks, weapon systems. Even in berthing, you're surrounded by machinery noise. And then asbestos exposure. If you served on any older ships, you were almost certainly exposed. Asbestos was everywhere. The insulation, the pipe covering, even the deck tiles. And then musculoskeletal injuries, tight spaces, sleep ladders, awkward positions. Shipboard life is hard on the body. And then for deck rates, exposures to paints, solvents, fuels, and cleaning chemicals, skin conditions, respiratory issues. So what you would document is something like, as a machinist mate aboard the USS whatever, I worked in engineering spaces with constant machinery noise exceeding 95 decibels. I was exposed to steam, lubricants, and fuel on a daily basis. Ship was commissioned in whatever year, and I was regularly in spaces containing asbestos insulation. All right, now let's talk air assault and airborne. If you were air assault qualified or airborne qualified, document it. Well, it should already be documented in your DD-214, but if you were air assault, things like fast roping, rappelling, sling load operations, you're going to have things like shoulder injuries, back injuries, knee and ankle impacts. If you are airborne qualified, literally every jump is a controlled crash. Static line, combat equipment, Hollywood jumps, it doesn't matter. Your body absorbs the impact every time that canopy opens, your neck whiplashes back, and then you crash to the ground doing your PLF. Document how many jumps you did. If you have a jump log, great, reference it, submit it. These are not just badges. These are injury mechanisms, so make sure the VA knows you did them and then know about them as well. So now you understand why MOS and occupation matters. Now let's talk about how to actually use it in your VA claim. So the statement in support of your claim. This is the strongest place to leverage your MOS and your occupation. It is in your statement in support of your claim, your personal statement. This is the document where you explain in your own words what happened and how it connects to your service. Most veterans will write a paragraph or two, but that's not enough. Your statement should include things like, 1, your MOS or occupation, which is a detailed description of what that job actually involved. Don't assume the C&P examiner knows what it is. Explain it like they've never heard it before. 2, what were your daily duties and physical demands? What did you do every day? What equipment did you use? What did you carry? What positions were you in regularly? 3, include your exposures, the noise, the chemicals, the fumes, the blasts, the vibrations, weather, toxic substances. Just be very specific. 4, when and how injuries occurred. Was there a specific incident or was it cumulative damage over time? Both are very valid points. And then 5, the last one here, why you may not have sought treatment until the time you did. This is important. Military culture discourages sick call. If you didn't go to medical because you'd be seen as weak or stigmatized, or because your unit discouraged it, or because you were too busy with the mission. Say that in your statement. Explain why the lack of medical records doesn't mean the injury didn't happen. Now, buddy statements, all right? Buddy statements are gold for MOS and occupation-related claims. So get statements from guys or gals you served with who can verify the conditions you worked in, where the exposures you shared, the physical demands of the job, the injuries they witnessed, the culture that prevented you from seeking treatment. A statement from a fellow tanker saying, well, we all jumped off the tanks multiple times a day. Nobody went to sick call for joint pain. It was just part of the job. That is powerful corroborating evidence. Now, for complex MOS or occupation-related claims, a next letter can sometimes connect the dots that the VA C&P examiner might miss. A good nexus letter will explain the medical connection between your specific job duties and your current condition. It will cite the physical demands, the exposures, the injury mechanisms in medical language that the VA understands. This is especially important when the connection is not obvious. A C&P examiner might not understand how years of tank vibration leads to lumbar disc degeneration. A next letter from a medical provider can explain that mechanism clearly in language the VA understands. So if you need a next letter that explains how your MOS or occupation relates to your condition, that's exactly what I do and we do every day at Xterra Health. I understand these jobs because I lived in that world. The link's in the description below, free consultation. So let me give you the common mistakes I see with MOS and occupation related claims. Mistake number 1, assuming the VA knows what your job was. They don't. Explain it in detail to them. Mistake number 2, not connecting the job to the injury you're claiming. It's not enough to say, well, I was a tanker and my knees hurt. You need to explain how being a tanker caused your knee condition, the jumping, the squatting, the climbing, the impact. Mistake number 3, not addressing the lack of medical records. If you did not go to sick call, and most of us did not, I was a medic and I still didn't go. Explain why. Don't leave it as a gap for the VA to exploit later. And mistake 4, forgetting about additional qualifications. Were you airborne, air assault, ranger school, a diver? All of those come with additional injury mechanisms beyond your base MOS or occupation. Document it all. And finally, mistake number 5 is not using that fast letter for your hearing or tinnitus claims. If your MOS or occupation is on that list, reference it. Make them concede the sound exposure. Look, your MOS or occupation isn't just a code on your DD-214. It's a record of what you did, the physical demands, the exposures, the sacrifices your body made. The VA doesn't automatically understand that. They see job codes, they don't see the reality. It's your job to show them that, to explain what a 12 Bravo or a 19 Kilo or an 11 Bravo actually means, to describe the daily grind, the exposures, the injuries that have accumulated over the years. So before you file or update your claim, 1, you need to identify your MOS or occupation and all additional qualifications. 2, you need to check the FAST letter to see if you're listed for noise exposure. 3, you need to write a detailed statement, a personal statement that explains your duties, exposures, and injuries. 4, you got to get buddy statements from battle buddies or people who served with you. And 5, consider getting a next letter for complex cases. So, you know what still gets me? I spent years doing things that I thought were normal. Carrying heavy loads, jumping out of planes, standing next to explosions, breathing in God knows what for God knows how long. I thought everyone's body felt like mine. It wasn't until I got out and talked to civilians and friends that were never served that I realized, no, this is not normal. Normal 35-year-olds don't have 3 herniated discs and tinnitus that never stops. The military broke us in ways we didn't even recognize because everyone around us was broken too. So when I tell you to document your MOS or occupation, I am telling you what I wish someone had told me earlier. The job did this. The job is the evidence. Make them see what we did. So go write your personal statement, go file your claim, and I'll see you in the next video. Until next time, stay mission ready.